Welcome to today's video in which we'll dive deep into the fascinating history of Hong Kong, a city that has a unique identity that has been shaped by Chinese traditions and British colonialism. Right behind me you can see the stunning skyline of Hong Kong and some mountains in the background. And behind these mountains there is the border in between China and China. And yes, you've heard right, there is a border within the country. And that border ensures that, for example, Chinese people would need a visa to get into Hong Kong. There is a normal passport control as if you would get into another country. It does sound a little bit complex and it is hard to understand, but in today's video I'll explain you how Hong Kong and China are one country that is being operated under two different systems. The story begins in the 19th century when China was ruled by the Qing dynasty and the British Empire was at its height. At this time, the English had a huge demand on tea. And since China was the biggest producer of tea, the British imported a lot of it into their country. The British are known for their tea time until today, so tea is still important for the British culture. And at that time, the Chinese realized that the British were kind of addicted to tea, and they increased the prices for tea even further. It was a good business for the Chinese, and they knew that the British would buy it anyway. At some point, the British realized the increasing prices were getting out of hand. They obviously weren't happy with it, and they needed to find a solution. So what did they do? Well, they created another addiction of opium here in China. The British began smuggling opium from India to China. India at that time was already under the control of the British. And with smuggling opium to China, they created a widespread addiction. And therefore, the British were able to finance their tea addiction with the income from opium. Obviously, the Chinese weren't happy with that. So at some point, they decided to ban the opium and destroyed all opium stock of the British. And with that, the first Opium War started. It lasted from 1839 until 1842. Until today, drugs are extremely forbidden in China and basically non-existing. Smuggling drugs into China will be punished with the death penalty. So they are, until today, very traumatized of the consequences that the opium crisis in China had for them. Because due to this opium, they have lost part of their country, which is nowadays known as Hong Kong. It is important to mention that the War of Opium didn't take place here in Hong Kong. It impacted China in general. The Chinese have lost the first War of Opium, and by losing it, the Chinese and the British signed a Treaty of Nanking in 1842. And with signing this treaty, Hong Kong was ceded to the British in perpetuity. This was the beginning of Hong Kong as a British colony. Further conflicts, such as the Second War of Opium, have caused China to lose further territories, such as Kowloon Island and the new territories of Hong Kong. The British gained these territories, but only under a 99 years lease. So for 99 years, the British were able to do whatever they wanted here in Hong Kong, and they created their own system here in Hong Kong, and they also created a booming economy. Hong Kong quickly grew from a small fishing village into a booming city and a huge financial hub. Its political system is based on the British Constitution, and therefore a very unique identity has been created here in Hong Kong. A lot of people started to immigrate into Hong Kong, many of them coming from China, and therefore the identity of Hong Kong as it is today is mixed by Chinese traditions as well as British colonialists. This has created a unique identity, and people here are neither Brits, neither are they Chinese, and therefore they identify as people from Hong Kong, as a very unique population. And this is causing lots of problems until today. I have noticed huge differences when I crossed from China into Hong Kong just a few days ago. It's like moving into a completely different country, basically. There are lots of things that change immediately after you cross the border. For example, you can still see a lot of influences from the British here in Hong Kong. English is one of the official languages and it is widely spoken here in Hong Kong. Lots of students speak it. Actually, they speak it in universities and in the schools. So a lot of young people speak English, even in the trains and amongst friends. But it's not only that. Also, the buses, for example, and the whole tram system reminds you of the British public transport system. There are double-decker buses here in Hong Kong. The taxis reminded me a lot of the British taxis. So there are still a lot of things visible until today here in Hong Kong. You've probably heard about protests here in Hong Kong and that people don't agree with the Chinese system. People here don't identify as Chinese. Actually, if you ask a person from Hong Kong where they are from, they will tell you they are from Hong Kong. And if you insist that they are from China, they will always tell you, no, they are from Hong Kong. They even have their own passport and therefore also different rules for visa, for example. Hong Kong has been shaped by the exposure to Western values, such as the freedom of speech, the rule of law, and democracy. These characteristics are a stark contrast to the centralized authoritarian system in China. And therefore, people obviously are not very happy to become part of the system. But why do they even have to become part of China? Well, that is because the 99 years lease of Hong Kong to the British ended in 1997. But since the differences between Hong Kong and China were so big, the British made sure that there would be a transition period. So in theory, in 1997, the British would have to return Hong Kong to China, which is also what happened. The British had to leave and Hong Kong became part of China. But the 50 years transition period that the British ensured for the people of Hong Kong ensured that the transition wouldn't be as harsh. So for 50 years, Hong Kong was allowed to keep their independent political system. This ensured that people would continue to have the freedom of speech, for example, and that people will still be able to do demonstrations, for example, and other things as well. But this is going to end in 2047, and no one really knows what is exactly going to happen in 2047. China is getting more and more control, and little by little they will completely take over the control of Hong Kong, also of their political system. And this is how one country and two systems has been created, meaning that Hong Kong and China would be one country ever since 1997, but it will be governed under two different political systems. Political tensions in between China and Hong Kong have led to the protest of 2019 and also to the imposition of the national security law that has caused even more distrust of the people of Hong Kong towards China. Little by little, China is gaining more and more power here in Hong Kong, and it causes huge problems because, for example, also the political system is completely different. Here in Hong Kong, people live with a democracy, while in China there is a one-party political system. Also, Hong Kong is an absolute capitalist city. So they work under a capitalist economy, while China is a communist country. So even there are huge gaps and nobody really knows what the solution will be in the end. Is Hong Kong being completely integrated to the one-party communist political system of China, or is it still going to stay a rather special zone of China? Nobody knows. We'll figure it out in 2047. But what we already see here in Hong Kong are Chinese flags, for example. You will see them almost everywhere on the streets as a little reminder that this here is already China. Besides that, they even do a ceremony every morning at 8 a.m. They are raising the flag of China with a ceremony, so basically celebrating that this here is part of China, and it's a constant reminder for people of Hong Kong to which country they belong. We've been, by the way, the only ones watching this parade. There's literally no one here, just some people running, and that's it. So nobody watches the daily flag-raising parade. And not far away from the flag-raising square is this pillar here. And thanks to Google Translate, I know what this says. The inscription says Hong Kong's return to the motherland monument. So again, this here is a reminder, a monument, as a reminder that Hong Kong will be returned to China. As the clock is ticking towards 2047, the question remains, can Hong Kong preserve its unique identity? Lots of Hong Kongers fear that with the full integration of Hong Kong into China, they will lose their freedom and their unique identity. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you believe that Hong Kong can preserve its unique identity, or are they going to lose their identity as well as their freedoms completely with the integration into China? And now don't forget to like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel, and I will hopefully see you in my next adventures.